Igor Cesar was named Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda to the Federal Republic of Germany on March 20th, 2015, and presented his credentials to German President Joachim Gauck in August 27, 2015. He was born in Germany from a Rwandan father and a German mother, and spent most of his childhood and youth in Africa, mainly in Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Burundi, where his father worked as an architect. He co-founded the first French Welcome and Settlement Agency in Edmonton, Canada. He also worked as the executive director of FAFA, the umbrella organization for Francophone seniors of Alberta. Igor co-founded Ubuntu Edmonton and Center Cesar in Kigali, a non-profit organization and a community center that work with a community of widows and orphans of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Igor has received many awards for his involvement in community building and social justice activism. The Leadership Bursary by the University of Alberta, Campus Saint-Jean. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome to GPAD 2022, Ambassador Igor Cesar.
It's a pleasure first to be here. I just wanted to acknowledge they were presenting my colleague, Ambassador of Burundi, who is sitting in front of me. So I just wanted to acknowledge her presence here. I just wanted also to express actually my gratitude to be part of this important event, especially on its 5th anniversary, because Pan-Africanism, it's something that I grew up with. If you heard about my story, you'll see that I have lived in many countries across the continent. So my upbringing is very Pan-African. So I'm here not only as an ambassador, but I'm here also as Pan-African. I would like to acknowledge also my thanks to the Ministry of the State of Baden-Württemberg to have given us this beautiful facility for this event. I would like to acknowledge and thank Mr. Philipp Kai, the director of the Stiftung Entwicklungszusammenarbeit. I would like to especially thank Mr. Timmy Lanrewaju, the executive director, founder, and of LEAD. I would like to acknowledge those who came today. When I look at the room today, I will be talking to the already convinced, so it will be an easier way. I'm very glad to see in front of me the youth, which is what we as a continent believe in and bank on our future. So it is an honor for me to attend this Global Partnership for African Development 2022 forum. And I commend you all for having jointly organized this important event and much needed dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is currently facing great challenges. Life, as we know, is changing at a fast pace on a global scale. In light of the consequences of climate change, the COVID pandemic, the current energy, gas, and food crisis, the war, we are all experiencing a shift that affects the global world order on many levels. New players have entered to the world top stage and are challenging to reshaping the global order on all levels, on the economic, political, and military level. Yet, our continent, Africa, although being part of the United Nations with 54 members country, with the fastest population growth, as well as an economy that grows into 2 digits yearly, is still perceived to be on the sidelines when it comes to shaping and being part of this new world order. The question is, what is the African continent position on these changing times? What could Africa's role be in the shaping process of the new world order? The current situation, though challenging, can also be seen as an opportunity to become part of the solution in these changing times. Africa can be part of the shaping member of the new global order. I will humbly start with our Rwandan story. Through our history, we've learned, when confronted with changing and challenging times, to go back to the basics and take time to reflect. After the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, we had lost many lives. We realized that we were on our own, that we needed to stand united and willing to rely on ourselves, to make our inventory about our past and our present, to invest into a people-centered development, to define together our vision for the rebuild of our country in order to reach global sustainable relevancy. For this to happen, we had to create an environment of peace, security, and solidarity based on common sustainable values. We developed an accountable system of governance. We invested into education, set up a national dialogue as a platform to include and unify our people, our communities, stakeholders, and partners to formulate a new vision to find homegrown solution that will shape the Rwanda that we want. Ladies and gentlemen, Rwanda's integrated economic development and social transformation did not happen by chance. It has been possible thanks to a common vision formulated and carried by its people, anchored on common cultural values, self-reliance, accountability, determination, and a tangible people-centered development. But also thanks to a strong political goodwill and leadership holding leaders accountable to delivering on commitments. We had to regain our human values, which are intrinsic to who we are as a people. Values that we share with many countries on the continent. Through what in Rwanda we call ubumuntu, what sometimes in other countries are called ubuntu. My neighboring country will confirm that those values ubuntu ring a bell, which means I am because you are, and relates to an African philosophy of solidarity and humanity on the need to become why the other one is. a philosophy which not only connected us back to ourselves, to our culture, and our core values, but also to our neighbors, to our region, to our continent, and to the world, and especially adapted to our times. Similarly, in this light, Africa can be part of shaping the new international order if it finds the clarity to take its destiny in its own hands. Africa has everything: human capital, domestic resources, energy, and above all, the intelligence. But still, we need to do more on our national level, regional, and continental level. We need, for example, to commit to Pan-Africa integration and create accountable system for our economies to thrive. See, whatever Rwanda invested in, we did it with sustainability in mind, be it human capital, environment, infrastructure, economy, or our relevancy. We always thought beyond today and on a long term. That is how we defined our country's Vision 2020 and today's Vision 2050. And since through our values, we felt connected to ourselves, to the continent, and to the world, it was only a logical consequence that Rwanda plays today an active role on key regional as well as global initiatives and is committed to Pan-African integration. That we are increasingly open and connected to the world and uniquely positions ourselves to serve our neighboring regional markets. As I've seen today with the presence in this dialogue, it was interesting to see how many fellow students from the continent are studying in Rwanda today. We also made sure to have robust access to African and global markets through robust free trade agreements, that we have the vision to become a Pan-African hub for innovation to drive inclusive economic and social transformation on the continent. Today, Rwanda is fast growing, a low-risk environment, a business-friendly environment, a regional platform, and an IT-ready country. Our country has created an enabling investment environment with business-friendly regulations, multiple incentives for exporters and priority sectors, improved supported its business administration processes, for example, in investing in highly digitalized and efficient administration or developing on a one-stop center dedicated to investors. As I said prior, staying in today's time. Ladies and gentlemen, all these achievements may be impressive, but they started from a very humble beginnings. From nothing and with great loss of human lives in the aftermath of our tragic crisis. We believe that with humility, resolve, accountability, sustainable planning, the goodwill to keep people together, and to leave no one behind, anything is possible. Any goal can be attained for us and for Africa. Distinguished invitees, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I just wanted to make sure to emphasize that we are not here to preach, but just rather humbly trying to share our experience. Since it is all that we have,
sich zu haben.
we do understand that each country has its own context, and therefore will have to mold its own path like we did. We do also acknowledge that although not publicized in this part of the world, much already has been achieved in our beloved continent and shows that we are on the right track. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the free space, the 5 African regional organizations are shaping the continental progress. Africa peace building architect is more and more being managed by regional groups, in some cases bilaterally, and has proven to be more efficient and less costly. Your solidarity to these initiatives are needed, since these are part and integral of a global security architecture. At last, I cannot conclude without expressing my appreciation to the organizers of this important GPAD Forum 2022 event for their support and contribution to making this event a success. Thank you for your esteemed attention. We believe in our continent, we believe in a successful future, and we believe to contribute our part. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ambassador Igor Cesar. We had, just to combine what the ambassador has said today, and also to recognize a lot of people have joined us online that have heard, that speech. And now we know Ubuntu in Rwanda and Burundi is Ubuntu also. So just we want to link this, how Africa is interconnected, how we are one people in our diversity, how we are connected in the culture, in the language, in the spirit of Africa. So if we, in the spirit of 2063, the African Union agenda, if we can pull together, encourage intertrade as we had, we can really change things. All right, so we had several speakers yesterday, and we had economists, and we understood that the inflation, as you've said, Ambassador, that the situation right now is dire, and Africa has experienced shocks, and we have learned that there's a great inflation, and that inflation has led to low productivity, which has led to low consumption, which has led to low productivity, which has created unemployment. And these shocks have affected Africa even more. So that we had yesterday. We also heard from your colleagues from Zimbabwe and from Nigeria that were here, and they shared with us. They shared with us also about the Southern African Development Community and what they're doing to really facilitate regional trade between and among countries, which we know we want to learn from you, the East African Community, and how they are forging ahead with intertrade. So while we do that, I just want to invite you back to answer a few questions from the audience, and one that was already compiled. And this is, at this juncture that we are, we know, and what you've shared with us from the history of Rwanda, and what Rwanda had to do to reach where it is, recovering from a very sad history that culminated to the genocide in 1994. And so when we look back and try to trace our steps to this moment, what are the lessons really, applying those now to the Africa that we have, to the climate crisis post-COVID-19 and the conflicts that we are now facing, how can Rwanda be a facilitator of helping to resolve? What lessons can we learn to help us face the crisis that we have now? That is one. We have the Sustainable Development Goals that you've mentioned. Let's not leave anyone behind. Let's take everyone with us in Africa. One of the things, 17 goals. We've seen education, as you've mentioned, goal number 4, that people are coming to Rwanda. People are also coming to other countries within Africa, but we still do not have a movement within Africa that we want, that is the aspiration of the 2063. And we do not have, we've also had intercontinental trade, the African Continental Trade Agreement being raised here from the diaspora and from African entrepreneurs. How can we forge that? How can we turn those aspirations of the union and make the union really solid and strong in terms of practically bringing those aspirations to life? I put this to you as I take one live question after you've addressed this from Victor afterwards, but I invite you back, Mr.
I'm glad that I don't need to go back into my speech. So to be able to freely respond actually to this question. First and foremost, one thing we have learned from our tragedy is that nobody will come to rescue you. You'll have to do it yourself. So that's one bitter but helpful at the end condition that led us to look inwards for solution and not outwards. So meaning the solution lies on us. So it's up to us. Nobody else will do it for us. It's up to us. If we want to be successful, if we want the Africa, to design the Africa we want, it's up to us to do it. So first, that was the first realization, that nobody will define it for us. Second realization, the way the global order is, we are always defined from outside. So which leads sometimes the lack of opportunity actually to do our own inventory. So I talked about inventory in my speech. We have to do our inventory, meaning we have to assess, where are we at? What do we have? And we will realize actually how much we have. So the speech of the president of Ghana saying actually we should be the givers and not the receivers is very true. Once you do your inventory, you realize actually we are the givers and have always been the givers. So that's number 2. But for that to happen, we have to realize that the core thing that drives any economy is the interaction of people, a free interaction of people. So you have to continue to see our people as the center. So, and for that to happen, we need to push on an infrastructure of peace and security that is sustainable to our continent. Again, with the same thinking in mind, that no one will do that for us. So to understand that security Peace is paramount to our development, because if you don't have security, if you don't live in a peaceful condition, you can't develop. Every other thing falls apart. So that's the third lesson we had. We had to see, that's why when you look at our flag, you'll see the blue. It's not for nothing that the blue is bigger than all the others. The blue meaning, if you want to see the future, the blue symbolizes peace and security for us. So it's a big part for development. So, which means we have to strengthen, as a people, we need to strengthen the architecture of peace and security of our continent, and see that actually it's in our interest to live peacefully with each other, but also internally, trying to find solutions, find the common good that we have and not what we lack. Because we tend to give more importance to what we lack, and we forget to utilize what we have. So, and we do have more common good. That's why I said on a continental level, we have values, actually, our traditional values that were relying on that interdependency, meaning I am because you are. So the peace of the other was our peace. So it's just reconnecting with who we are, I think, will help us. That's the third component. And the rest is having a governance system that reflects our reality. Meaning having leaders that look like the demography that we are. When I look here and I say, okay, these are the leaders of tomorrow, I see youth. This is our continent. Our continent demography is overwhelmingly youth. If our leadership reflect that, people will feel that they are at stake. So ownership, accountability is the key, holding ourselves accountable, not blaming the other for our mischievement. Seeing, as I said, that was what we learned. So, but as I said, I'm not here to try to preach or to tell what is right. I know our continent, we have 54 countries, 54 different realities. I'm here only to share with humility, really, our own experience, what we have learned, because I don't wish anyone to go through what we have gone through. That was my long answer to your short question.
Perhaps you could comment on the interconnectedness of Africa and how trade or movement within Africa for the people, even in the light of the one passport that the 2063 agenda talks about.
I remember one thing, Rwanda, we were always told while we were living in exile. For instance, I lived outside my country until I was an adult. So while we were living in exile, one of the things that we were always told by the international community, that Rwanda was full, was overpopulated. There was no place for refugees to come back. So that was the notion of how we were perceived from outside, meaning going back was going to create more problem than managing actually growth so that the population are safe and can grow within their continent. So when I look at that time, we were around 4 million. Today we are 12 million. We're doing better. We have more space. And Rwanda didn't grow physically. It stayed the same. So which means the way, sometimes we're defined from the outside world in terms of fearing of our capacity to you would think, okay, we are addressed with always false problems. So coming back to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, I remember when it was signed, no television, no media outlet in this part of the world. It happened while we were in Rwanda. It happened on the launch of the Africa Passport happened in Rwanda. So good things are happening, as I said. It's not because someone will talk that they are happening, that they will happen. No, they are happening. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, it's the biggest free trade agreement in the history. 54 countries. Just go compare it to the European Union, you'll see that we are already double the size in terms of market that we are putting together. And nobody was talking about it. So it's not because, so we have to disconnect what is publicized and reality. So Africa is developing. I'm looking at Rwanda itself. In 1994, we didn't have an airline. We had one plane and one cargo. Today, we are connecting the whole continent. So we are connected. So we are not only talking about Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're talking of also the airspace, free airspace agreement. That is also a huge threat. But because it is not publicized, we tend to fall into what I call a cynicism. And I think what we need to fight against is to fall into that cynicism of seeing ourselves as incapable, we can't do attitude. We are capable. We did it. And when you look at the ratification, actually, it's the fastest ratified free trade agreement in history. And still, how much do we hear about it? We only try to be defined on the moment and not on the journey. That is a luxury that this part of the world has had. And had over 1,000 years of experience, of history to be where they are at. But when it comes to us, we have to be today. We have to be defined by small shortfalls. No, we are defined by the journey. We shouldn't be defined by the little. So going back to your question, I think when we look at the pace in which Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement has been ratified and is starting to be implemented, and you see the movement of the people in the continent right now, we are in a fast pace towards achieving that Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Of course, we on local levels, we're talking about regional. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is based also on 5 regional organizations, that will So it's strengthening first the regional capacity of inner trade, and then integrate it in a continental free trade agreement. So we have started. In this case, I have to thank also Germany, that is playing also its part in strengthening the implementation, because the implementation authority is in Ghana as we speak, and Germany is one of the partners that are invested in the institution. So for me, I see very positive things happening. And I think for the African diaspora, what I would always, it's to know, I think it's to come back into what is our center. Do we continue to are we talking about Africa outside of us, or are we talking? I've heard good comments here. The Africa-centric approach. Being in the diaspora, it's very difficult to be Africa-centered approach, where all the education that is given to us is not with us in mind. So we have to find our own relevance in whatever we are being educated here. So that's our job. So, and what I can only encourage you is go, visit the continent, see, with yourself. When I talk about Rwanda, sometimes people look at me and say, you are the ambassador, you're just talking about these things and so on. And I always say, I would love you to go to Rwanda to prove me the contrary. And I think for the diaspora that is here, I would love, for you to stay connected to your continent, because that's where you are going to get the energy, and not forget, why you are here. You are here to complement what you have, but the center, it starts with you. So that's in a nutshell, because the rest, to respond to your question, the rest will be very technical, and I would rather leave the technical teams, to go on the nitty-gritty. But I think the biggest achievement of the continent will be a mindset shift, and this is happening.
I know that Patricia has a question and Dr. Victor has a question, and I'll take a question from Professor Kolo, who's sent a question online. Professor Kolo was here yesterday, Ambassador. You didn't, you missed out on his contribution, but I will fill you in later.
Yeah.
So I'll just give the mic to Patricia. I think you have, and then after her question, we go to Dr. Victor.
Thank you very much. My name is Patricia Baumann. I'm originally from Sierra Leone. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for being here. I'm very grateful that a country like Rwanda is represented in this very important forum. As you know, Rwanda is the role model in Africa in terms of peace, security, and stability, which are for me three fundamental aspects of economic development. And not even Nigeria is second to Rwanda. I hope I'm right. I am from Sierra Leone, as I said, and as you may know, Sierra Leone is actually the sick man now in Africa. Almost everything is going wrong. And we've had 10 years or 11 years of senseless civil war. And now all eyes are on Rwanda. We want to be developed like Rwanda. But our suggestion is that we should have a war like Rwanda in order to come this far like you. And my question is, do we really need that? Do you think there is a way out? Do you think we can develop without fighting another senseless war to kill more people like you had in Rwanda in order for to be developed? Do you have any advice for Sierra Leoneans? Thank you.
A difficult question, you know, first, because we don't see ourselves as a role model. As I said, we're just trying to resolve our issue, but we are always ready to share our experience. So that's one thing why it's difficult to answer to that question. The second thing why it is difficult to answer your question, if you look at our flag today, you won't see the color red in it. There is a reason why we didn't put the color red. We took out the color red in our national flag, because we do not believe that blood need to be shed to have peace. So that's a fundamental belief for us already. As I said, when you go back to the value of Ubuntu in most of the country, I mean, you know, we are interconnected and interdependent. So for me, as I said, I don't wish anyone war to get where we are. I wish actually our experience to be enough for the rest of the continent to thrive from. Because even when we talk about the usage of our technology today to leapfrog, we are using capability that are out there in the world to develop ourselves. And I'm quite sure the story of those capability have been used on the beginning, like to give you an example, we transport our blood for blood transfusion by drones that were designed actually for usually in war scenes. So we are trying to recycle actually what you know, to recycle what is harming us into changing it into something that builds us. So for me, you know, the only advice I can give is to say you can actually stop it. Because if you don't stop it, nobody cares. If you don't care, nobody will care. And if someone cares, they care not for you. So the solution won't be yours either. So, you know, in a way, I think taking our own responsibility is the first act of patriotism, is accepting that I have a stake in this. And I think if you go that route, you might realize very fast that you might not need actually the war. You might focus on doing actually your part on that building block. So it's just, and I am not in Sierra Leone today, but I'm very curious. I'm quite sure what I see in the news about Sierra Leone and the reality in Sierra Leone, there must be a huge disconnect. Although, you know, I acknowledge the problem, but you might realize by being in Sierra Leone that the problem is not that big as the way it is being presented. So I think that's also, you know, staying connected to that reality and believe that you are a stakeholder in that, in the establishment of that peace and security. So that will be my, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think Victor, you go, and then we'll have Ambassador. Can we take two questions at one?
Yeah.
So we take Victor's, and then They're increasing.
Yeah, good one. Thanks, Ambassador. It's nice to see you again in GPAD. Thank you so much for defending the African culture and image recognition in the global platform. Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Vito Aladisoni. I have just 3 questions, but it has to go straight to the point. In Africa, we have over 60% waste from production and how we do so far. In Rwanda, we have 40% of total production each year of waste, 1% from the land contribute to 16% of the country greenhouse emission, which this loss of 12% of Rwanda's annual GDP. It's a common thing in Africa we need to target. We're doing so much to do this, but I want to know how intentional are we and what design measures in architecture to ensure circularity, to ensure we reduce waste. Most of these waste are from dams. I want to know that. Number 2, I want to know what are the futuristic value of the impact definition of African projects? Futuristic value of the impact definition of African project. All the projects in Africa, in the impact definition, how futuristic are they? Are they sustainable in the next 100, 200 years? Most are very short term, and that's why they quench out very, very early. The last question, I want to know, what is the sense of ownership of of African developmental goals of a theory of change? How consistent are we? Are we guided by the instructors who give us the SDGs and we play by them and what will be behind them? Thank you.
So let's start with the waste greenhouse aspect of things on the continent. First, in light of the global context, we are in terms of percentage, we are the smallest percentage of waste creator, our continent. And we're the highest percentage maybe on waste creation based on possible renewable waste, meaning agricultural waste and so on, so biodegradable waste. I will give you an example of very simple things that happened to Rwanda, where from one day to another, you take one decision and then the second and the third, and then suddenly you are responding to a problem maybe that you didn't aim on the beginning, but you're responding to a problem. Rwanda is known today for having banned one-use plastic, one-time use plastic. The story behind taking that out was exactly, how we burn our waste. Later on, the plastic, we had a huge turnout in Rwanda of people. When we started to talked about doing our inventory on our healthcare system, we realized that most of the people who were going to the hospital, they were either injured with infection related issues or pulmonary problems. So that was one of the highest number in terms of hospitalization, things that we thought could be avoidable. So 2 things were happening in Rwanda at that time. Our infrastructure was broken and we had dirt roads. So every time a car went through, I remember in 2001 when I went to Rwanda for the first time, you drive and you had to bath yourself maybe 2 to 3 times because you came home, the dust and so on. So it was very dusty because the roads were not paved. That was one little things to be changed in order to reduce, what causes this allergy, these pulmonary problems. The second thing, we're burning our waste, and plastic burns were very much affecting our pulmonary. So decisions were made, let's build the infrastructure, let's pave the roads, reduce the dust in the create, we started to say, the clean city, clean city. And then second was, how can we reduce, the plastic? So we said, okay, we have to ban the plastic. And I remember and third was, we had to ban people walking barefoot, because most of these infections I was talking about, they were related on people walking barefoot and waste on the road.
I'm wondering, I'm recording. Do you have your laptop?
So they were injuring themselves most of the time because of that. So we said, if we change these 3 things, we'll reduce actually. But the result of it became very real on environment. So to say, sometimes when we talk about waste management solution in our continent, it doesn't take much. So the waste greenhouse, I think when it comes to the continent, it is easy actually it is easier to manage on what we are seeing on the global level. The only difficulty is, how do we make sure that the experience of the rest of the world and the technology that are out there get to the continent so that we do it more efficiently, that we don't do the same mistakes. So when we talk about new technology, because Africa to develop has to be able to industrialize, has to intensify its production capacity and so on, it will need energy. The alternative energy, how fast can we leverage on what has been discovered and so on, what's more sustainable to bring it. So it would take a lot of collaboration with the rest of the world to be able to leverage on what's out there efficiently. So that's my long answer on the reduce. The futuristic impact, I don't like to speculate on how the future will look like. All I have is today. That's what I own. It's what I do today that will impact the future. And when I look at the vision Africa has, the Vision 2063, if we implement it, yes, we will have a good future. So it's difficult to speculate on how it will look like, because adaptation, re-evaluation is always on the road. So you can't, if someone had told you 3 years ago that the world was going to stop for a year and nothing will happen, as an economist, you would have said you are crazy. But it did happen. So adaptation is our capacity to adapt, but our resolve to have at least a tool where and the goal that we follow and the discipline behind making sure that it is happening, that's what I will bet more on than thinking of how it will look like. But each country, each region have their own vision. So now we have, with the digital world, we have also possibility to dream. I remember in 2002, when we were dreaming of what the convention center today is in Rwanda, I was, you know, presenting it. It was because we had that virtual capacity to show how it will look like, and it happened, but it's not always going to happen. So it's our capacity to follow through, to stick on our plan, and sustainably work on reevaluating our progress. That's why I say accountability becomes a key in this. So the sense of ownership of Africa developmental goals, it would depend on how, for us, you have to, there's a lot of education to be given, so that this is not just a decision from top, but that the people, it is translated in realities on the ground. So that's why depending on how organized the country is, these developmental goals will have an effect. And the more this becomes accessible, becomes a day-to-day, you know, reality to the stakeholders, the more, you know, we will have a sense of ownership. So it depends on how what kind of tools, adapted tools, do we use to inform and to keep our people. That's why I said, you know, leave no one behind. Just get every stakeholders. In Rwanda, we do, even the developmental partners, they are part of the whole, they are part of the planning on a local level. So they don't just come after, they are part and integral of the developmental process and accountability. So that's...
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to recognize Daniel Muratilis. Dan, thank you for being there yesterday and today. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask, in the interest of time, to really just summarize your questions, and so that we wrap it up. Sorry? Yes, I know. So you had a question? Could you go first?
Questions?
And then I will
online?
combine your question and Sylvia's,
Yeah.
and ask then Professor Okolo's as well, so that
Yeah.
you just, perhaps there's similarities in the questions you take.
Yeah.
The three of them, then we're open. Karim.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Kema or Kerstin Joya, and I'm morely connected to West Africa French side, Ivory Coast. And one question I have is it possible or imaginable that next time it can go into direction of inviting organizations that are supporting social development here in Germany and in Africa, and also economic bosses, let me say CEOs, to bring them also together, and also Academy, Lead Africa, to exchange ideas and to develop plans, no? How we can act together, how we can morally grow together to make Africa be what it is meant to be. Just wonderful and great, magical. I have been in Ivory Coast and I really fulfilled my dream. My son is half an Ivorian, or he's Ivorian and German, a little bit similar to your history. And that is why I'm connected to Ivory Coast. And I really fulfilled my dream to go there once and really see with my own eyes what is going on there and what is it all about. And I found a great family, a big family. And this sense of family and love is what I took back here, because we have a lack of this a little bit here. And yes, I would love to have a maybe format next time that goes to that direction, that we can more unite. The next, I have a little answer. We could try to find an answer. Is our future lies where? Where does lie our future? What did God teach us, or the Bible? It is the youth. It is the children. When we think about the needs of our children as the most holiest treasure that we can ever have in this world, when we treat our children right, we know exactly what is to do and what is to avoid. So, is war something we should do for our children? Or what should we do for our children? Thank you.
Thank you, Kerstin. Thank you for that and for the comments. Thank you. So Sylvia?
Okay, I have quite a critical point, because our youth is our future, and Africa has the biggest youth in the world. So the potential of any economical solution of the world will be lying in Africa. And at the moment, there are negotiations between Great Britain and Rwanda because of this refugee, the youth coming over, and we had that with the European Union, with Libya, and now it's like it's divided into Rwanda and Great Britain. I'd like to I'd ask you to take that on, because Rwanda is progressing, but Rwanda can also be misused. And if we are going to build an Africa which is sustainable, because you said you leave now, what's the legacy we are leaving behind for our children? Because that's a very, very crucial point, and we can't fight these borders and Africa being used again. We have to work together for this solution.
Thank you for that, Sylvia Rupert. And online, Professor Okolo asks, what are the socioeconomic indicators that are driving policy for citizens? What are those indicators for Rwanda that can be shared, not like perhaps in a playbook sort of sharing, but that perhaps let's just take, I think, Cesar.
Mm-hmm. First, thank you for the question. But the question also indicates the mindset I was talking about. Nobody questions when, when people go to England, it has become a normal thing to ask refugee in England. Nobody questions England. Why are you taking in refugees? I want to inform you first that the biggest in the world right now, the biggest holder of refugees is the continent Africa. So that's a fact. I want you to base it first on those facts. So bringing in refugees wherever they come from is a question of principle. But because the way things are always framed about the continent as a receiver, not a giver, this question comes to us. Because nobody has asked us when refugees of Burundi came to Rwanda, whether it was a huge, why do we take refugees of Burundi? Why do we take refugees of Congo? Why do we take refugees? So nobody asked us those questions. It was never a problem. And I want to tell you, so just to put things into context, refugees of England are one of the refugees that we are hosting. So it's not it's not driven. That's why I say it depends always how people frame it. Just because it is England, because England will have a responsibility to be part of that reintegration program, that means there is money involved. That means the drive is money, is not the principle. We can argue the same when UN is helping refugees in our country. It's money that is involved. That's why the drive of helping refugees is not the principle, it's still the money. So I want you to first understand where we come from in order to be able to judge rightfully our intentions. As I said, even myself, I'm a son of a refugee, stateless, who had a state only after 1994, a right to a state, only in 1994. So that's our story, that's our reality. So when we committed as a country to say, one of the 8 elements of our constitutional commitment was to eradicate any cause of refugee. And this doesn't limit us to Rwanda. It looks at it on a global stage. So whatever we are doing today is first and foremost value-driven. Our principles of helping a refugee starts with the right of a refugee to find a place. So that's the first drive. The way it is always presented, it's a deal, right? Suddenly the refugee has no rights in it. So, you know, nobody is concerned about the refugee. Nobody is telling us, you know, and it is not the first one. When the crisis of Libya, crisis of African refugees in Libya was there, our president was a president of the African Union at that, the chair of the president of the African Union, had the presidency at that time. And he felt as a continent responsible to respond to that plight of African people of African descent who are in Libya, to find a temporary shelter. But for us to walk the talk, he said, I will be the first one to accept these refugees as a temporary shelter while they are waiting for a long-term, a sustainable solution. So we're the first one to bring people from African refugees from Libya to Rwanda. What is important maybe to address will be those who came, how are they doing? What is their condition compared to how those who are stranded are doing? If that argument stays and see that actually they are doing a lot worse, then we can start a truthful debate. But rest assured, our intentions are right, no matter how people want to view it. So the second question was the indicators. So I will ask the person who was asked. When it comes to Rwanda, actually we have what we call the Rwanda Governance Board that does actually indicator in terms of the governance that collect indicators on satisfaction of the people on the services and so on. So Statistic Rwanda works in that end. We have the Rwanda Governance Board. They can go they can look into the report of the Rwandan Governance Board, and it will give you all these indicators. Yeah.